This is The Swiss Family Robinson, or Adventures in the Desert Island, by Johann David Wyss, and illustrated by John Gilbert, originally published in 1812. This ebook is for the use of anyone, anywhere in the United States, and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restriction whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away, or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at gutenberg.org. If you're not located in the United States, you will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. Preface. Many years ago, an English translation of the first part of this charming tale appeared, and few books have obtained such deserved popularity. The gradual progress of the family from utter destitution and misery to happiness and abundance, arising from their own labor, perseverance, and obedience together, with the effect produced on the different characters of the son by the stirring adventures they met with, created a deep and absorbing interest. Every young reader patronized either the noble Fritz, the studious Ernst, or the generous Jag, and regarded him as a familiar personal acquaintance. The book had but one defect. The death of the talented author left it unfinished, and every reader regretted its abrupt termination. This conclusion was happily supplied by one of the most accomplished and elegant writers of her day, the Baroness de Montalou, and sanctioned and approved by the son of the lamented author. The entire work was published in France, and has for many years held a distinguished rank in juvenile libraries there. For the gratification of the little family circle, this now appears in English, and as on examining the first part of the original, it was found that some new discoveries might be made. It was thought best to read translated, subduing the tone of the whole English taste, and the unanimous voices of the beloved circle, for whom the pleasant task was undertaken, and pronounced the result eminently successful, and they generously wish that the whole of the juvenile public of England should share in their satisfaction and possess a complete Swiss Robinson. Introduction. It was very well known that some years ago, Councillor Horner, a Swiss, made a voyage round the world in the Russian vessel Le Podesta. Commanded by Captain Krusenstern, they discovered many islands, and amongst others one very large and fertile, till then unknown to navigators, to the southwest of Java, near the coast of New Guinea. They landed here, and to the great surprise of Mr. Horner, he was received by a family who spoke to him in German. There were a father, a mother, 4 robust and hardy sons. Their history was very interesting. The father was a Swiss clergyman who in the Revolution of 1798 had lost all his fortune and determined to emigrate in order to seek elsewhere the means of supporting his family. He went first to England, with his wife and children consisting of 4 sons between the ages of 12 and 5. He there undertook the office of missionary to Otaheite. Not that he intended to remain on that uncivilized island, but he wished to proceed from thence to Port Jackson as a free colonist. He invested his little capital in seeds of every description, and some cattle to take with them. They had a prosperous voyage, till they were near the coast of New Guinea, when they were overtaken by a frightful storm. At this period he commenced his journal, which he afterward committed to the care of Mr. Horner, to be forwarded to his friends in Switzerland. Some time before, a boat from an English vessel, the Adventurer, had visited them, and the father had sent the first part of his journal by Lieutenant Bell to the captain, who remained in the vessel. A violent tempest arose, which continued some days, and drove the Adventurer from the coast. The family concluded the ship was lost, but this was not the case, as will be seen in the conclusion. The Swiss Family Robinson. Chapter 1. The tempest had raged for 6 days, and on the 7th seemed to increase. The ship had been so far driven from its course that no one on board knew where we were. Everyone was exhausted with fatigue and watching. The shattered vessel began to leak in many places, and the oaths of sailors were changed to prayers, and each thought only how to save his own life. "Children," I said to my terrified boys who were clinging round me, God can save us if he will. To him nothing is impossible, but if he thinks it good to call us to him, let us not murmur. We shall not be separated." My excellent wife dried her tears, and from that moment became more tranquil. We knelt down and prayed for the help of our Heavenly Father, and the fervor and emotion of my innocent boys proved to me that even children can pray and find in prayer consolation and peace. We arose from our knees, strengthened to bear the affliction that hung over us. Suddenly we heard amid the roaring of the waves, "Land! Land!" At that moment the ship struck a rock. The concussion threw us down. We heard a loud cracking, as if the vessel were parting asunder. We felt that we were aground, and heard the captain cry in a tone of despair, "We're lost! Launch the boats!" These words were daggers to my heart, and the lamentation of my children were louder than ever. I then recollected myself and said, "Courage, my darlings, we're still above water, and land is near. God helps those who trust in him. Remain here, and I'll endeavor to save us." I went on deck and was instantly thrown down and wet through by a huge sea, and a second followed. I struggled boldly with the waves and succeeded in keeping myself up. I saw with terror the extent of the wretchedness. The shattered vessel was almost in two. The crew had crowded the boats, and the last sailor was cutting the rope. I cried out and prayed them to take us with them, but my voice was drowned out in the roar and the tempest, nor could they have returned for us through waves that ran mountains high. All hope from their assistance was lost, but I was consoled by observing that the water did not enter the ship above a certain height. The stern, under which lay the cabin, which contained all that was dear to me on earth, was immovably fixed between two rocks. At the same time I observed towards the south traces of land, which, though wild and barren, was now the haven for my almost expiring hopes, no longer being able to depend on human aid. I returned to my family and endeavored to appear calm.
"Take courage. There's yet hope for us. The vessel, in striking between two rocks, is fixed in a position which protects the cabin above water, and if the wind should settle tomorrow, we may possibly reach land."
This assurance calmed my children, and as usual, they depended on all I told them. They rejoiced that the heaving of the vessel had ceased, as while it lasted, they were continually thrown against each other. My wife, more accustomed to read my countenance, discovered my uneasiness, and by a sign I explained to her that I had lost all hope. I felt great consolation in seeing that she supported our misfortune with truly Christian resignation. "Let us take some food," she said. "With the body, the mind is strengthened. This must be a night of trial." Night came, and the tempest continued its fury, tearing away planks from the devoted vessel with its fearful crashing. It appeared absolutely impossible that the boat could outlive the storm. My wife had prepared some refreshments of which the children partook with an appetite that we could not feel. The three younger ones had retired to their beds and soon slept soundly. Fritz, the eldest, watched with me.
"I've been considering," he said, "how we could save ourselves. If only we had some cork jackets or bladders for Mama and my brothers. You and I don't need them. We could swim to land."
A good thought. I'll try during the night to contrive some expedient to secure our safety. We found some small empty barrels in the cabin, which we tied together with our handkerchiefs, leaving a space between for each child, and fastened this new swimming apparatus under their arms. My wife prepared the same for herself. We then collected some knives, string, tinder box, and such little necessities as we could put in our pockets. Thus, in case the vessel should fall to pieces during the night, we hoped we might be enabled to reach land. At length, Fritz, overcame with fatigue, lay down and slept with his brothers. My wife and I, too anxious to rest, spent that dreadful night in prayer and in arranging various plans. How gladly we welcomed the light of day shining through an opening. The wind was subsiding, the serene sky, and I watched the sun rise with a renewed hope. I called my wife and children on deck. The younger ones were surprised to find we were alone. They inquired what had become of the sailors, and how we should manage the ship. "Children, One more powerful than man has protected us till now, and will extend a saving arm to us if we do not give way to complaint and despair. Let all hands set to work, and remember that excellent maxim, God helps those who help themselves. Let us all consider what is best to do now.
Let us leap into the sea, cried Fitz, and swim to shore. Very well for you, replied Ernst, who can swim, but we should be all drowned. Would it not be better to construct some sort of raft and go all together?
That might do, I added, if we were strong enough for such a work, and if a raft was not always so dangerous a conveyance. But away, boys, look about you and seek for anything that might be useful to us. We all dispersed to different parts of the vessel. For my own part, I went to the provision room to look for casks of water and other necessities of life. My wife visited the livestock and fed them, for they were almost famished. Fritz sought for arms and ammunition, Ernst the carpenter's tools. Jack had opened the captain's cabin and was immediately thrown down by 2 large dogs, who leaped on him so roughly that he cried out as if they were going to devour him. However, hunger had rendered them so docile that they licked his hands, and he soon recovered his feet, seized the largest by the ear, and mounting his back, gravely rode him up to me as I was coming from the hold. I could not help but laughing. I applauded his courage, but recommended him always be prudent with animals of that kind, who are often dangerous when hungry. Fritz had found 2 fowling pieces and some bags of powder, shot, and balls, in horn flasks. Ernst was loaded with an axe, hammer, a pair of pincers, a large pair of scissors, and an auger showed itself halfway out of his pocket. Francis had a large box under his arm, from which he eagerly produced what he called these little pointed hooks. His brother laughed at his prize. "Silence," said I. "These are fish hooks, and may be more useful to the preservation of our lives than anything the ship contains. However, Fritz and Ernst have not done amiss."
For my part, said my wife, I only contribute good news. I found the cows, an ass, 2 goats, 6 sheep, and a sow with young. I have fed them, and hope we may preserve them.
"Very well, my little workman. I am satisfied with all but Master Jack, who, instead of doing anything useful, has contributed 2 great eaters who will do us more harm than good."
They can help us hunt when we get to land, said Jack.
"Yes, but can you devise any means for our getting there?"
It does not seem at all difficult,
said the spirited little fellow.
Put us each in a great tub and let us float to shore. I remember sailing capitally that way on Grandpapa's great pond at
"A very good idea, Jack. Good counsel may sometimes be given even by children. Be quick, boys. Give me the saw and auger with some nails, and we will see what we can do." I remember seeing some empty casks in the hold. We went down and found them floating. This gave us less difficulty in getting them upon the lower deck, which was but just above the water. They were of strong wood, bound in iron hoops, and exactly suited to my purpose. My sons and I therefore began to saw them through the middle. After a long labor, we had 8 tubs, all the same height, and we refreshed ourselves with the wine and biscuits which we had found in some of the casks. I then contemplated with delight my little squadron of boats ranged in a line, and was surprised that my wife still continued depressed. She looked mournfully on them.
I can never venture in one of those tubs, she said.
"Wait a little till my work is finished," I replied, "and you'll see it is more to be depended upon than this broken vessel." I sat out a long flexible plank and arranged the 8 tubs on it, close to each other, leaving a piece at each end to form a curve upward, like a keel of a vessel. We then nailed them firmly to the plank and to each other. We nailed a plank at each side of the same length as the first, and succeeded in producing some sort of a boat, divided into 8 compartments, in which it did not appear difficult to make a short voyage over a calm sea. But unluckily, our wonderful vessel proved so heavy that our united efforts could not move it an inch. I sent Fritz to bring me the jack-screw, and in the meantime sawed a thick round pole into pieces. Then, raising the forepart of our work by means of a powerful machine, Fritz placed one of the rollers under it. Ernst was very anxious to know how this small machine could accomplish more than our united strength. I explained to him as well I could the power of the lever of Archimedes, with which he had declared he could move the world if he had but a point to rest it on.
and I promised my son to take the machine to pieces when we were on shore and explain the mode of operation. I then told them that God, to compensate for the weakness of man, had bestowed him with reason, invention, and skill in workmanship. The result of these had produced a science which, under the name of mechanics, taught us to increase and extend our limited powers incredibly by the aid of instruments. Jack remarked that the jack screw worked very slowly. Better slowly than not at all, I said. As a principle in mechanics, that what is gained in time is lost in power. The jack is not meant to work rapidly, but to raise heavy weights, and the heavier the weight, the slower the operation. But can you tell me how we can make up for this slowness?
Oh, by turning the handle quicker, to be sure.
Quite wrong. That would not aid us at all. Patience and reason are the two fairies by whose potent help I hope to get our boat afloat. I quickly proceeded to tie a strong cord to the after part of it, and the other end to the beam in the ship, which was still firm, leaving it long enough for security, and then introducing 2 more rollers underneath, and working the jack, we succeeded in launching our bark, which was passed into the water with such velocity that but for our rope it would have gone out to sea. Unfortunately, it had leaned so much to one side that none of the boys would venture onto it. I was in despair, when I suddenly remembered it only wanted ballast to keep it in equilibrium. I hastily threw in anything I got a hold of that was heavy as soon as I had my boat level and ready for occupation. And soon I had the boat level and ready for occupation. They now contended who should enter first, but I stopped them, reflecting that the restless children might easily capsize our vessel. I remembered that savage nations made use of an outrigger to prevent their canoes from oversetting, and this I determined to add to my work. I fixed 2 portions of a topsail yard, one over the prow and the other across the stern, in such a manner that they should not be in the way in pushing off our boat from the wreck. I forced the end of each yard into the bunghole of an empty brandy cask to keep them steady during our progress. It was now necessary to clear the way for our departure. I got into the tub, and managed to get the boat into a cleft in the ship's side by way of a haven. I then returned, and with the axe and saw cut away right and left all that could obstruct our passage. Then we secured some oars to be ready for our voyage next day. The day had passed in toil, and we were compelled to spend another night on the wreck, though we knew it may not remain till morning. We took a regular meal, for during the day we had scarcely had time to snatch a morsel of bread or a glass of wine. I took the precaution to fasten the swimming apparatus across the shoulders of my 3 young children and my wife, for fear another storm might destroy the vessel and cast us into the sea. I also advised my wife to put on a sailor's dress as more convenient for her expected toils and trials. She reluctantly consented, and after a short absence appeared in the dress of a youth who had served as a volunteer in the vessel. She felt very timid and awkward in her new dress, but I showed her the advantage of the change, and at last she was reconciled, and joined the laughter of the children at her strange disguise. She then got into her hammock, and we enjoyed a pleasant sleep to prepare us for our new labors. This concludes Chapter 1 of Swiss Family Robinson. I hope you enjoyed, and if you would like to watch other videos, I will have a link in the description to my channel, as well as some videos on the end screen. If you like this type of content, please consider liking the video and subscribing, and to have an excellent rest of your night.